The Vietnam War was a tragedy for many. According to Ronald Spector, over 3 million people died in total. But how did it actually happen, and how does the war still affect people to this day? According to Jennifer Llewellyn and Steve Thompson, it all started during the age of colonialism, where many countries were setting up colonies in different territories. In 1880, France set up a colony in modern-day Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. The French justified their colonization by saying that they were merely civilizing the people, but in reality, they were just there to make money.
I want to start a colony in Indochina because every other country is making colonies.
What about the people who live there now?
We will say that we're trying to civilize them, but we're just going to make money.
Fast forward to World War II in 1940, when France was taken over by Germany and France could no longer control their colony.
We're now entering World War II.
A little while later,
We're getting taken over by Germany.
That means we can't keep control of the colonies in Indochina.
According to PacificAtrocities.org, when France surrendered to Germany, it gave Japan an opportunity to take the former French colony and make it their own. And because Japan was running out of raw materials at the time, Japan did exactly that, taking over French Indochina and taking resources such as rice, rubber, and oil.
The French have to surrender to Germany.
Now that France is no longer controlling Indochina, that gives me a chance to take it over, because I'm the Japanese. But once Japan lost the war to the United States and World War II was over, Vietnam declared its independence from France. France didn't like this, and the French Indochina War broke out. 5 years later, in 1950, the US sent aid to France to help them keep control of Vietnam. In 1954, the Vietnamese defeated the French, winning their independence. Right afterwards, Vietnam was split into two sides. There was the North, and then there was the South, each of them having their own leaders. Ho Chi Minh led the North, with Ngo Diem leading the South. Oh no, we just lost a war to the US.
I'm from Vietnam, and I want my independence from France.
No, you do not get independence. I declare war.
I'm from the US, and we should send the supplies to France to help them.
a little while later,
We won the war! What do we do though?
I think we should split the country in half.
There was one big problem though, and it was that the North was communist while the South was capitalist, and at the time, the United States was very against communism.
The North will be communist.
The South will be capitalist.
I'm from the US and I hate communism, so I'm gonna side with the South. According to Russell Friedman, in 1957, there was an uprising in communism in South Vietnam. 3 years later, in 1960, the Viet Cong was formed, which was a movement that was made to overthrow South Vietnam's government and reunite North and South Vietnam into one country. At the time, the United States really didn't like how the Northern Communists wanted to take over the South, so in 1961, they increased their military and economic aid to South Vietnam. For example, they increased their military advisors from 200 to 12,000, which is 60 times more people. Like the North's plan to reunite the country, so we need to increase military aid.
That sounds good.
In 1965, Operation Rolling Thunder began. Operation Rolling Thunder was basically just the bombing of North Vietnam, but only 2 years after the US started bombing Vietnam in 1967, the Defense Secretary stated that the bombing had little effect. In 1968, the My Lai Massacre happened, which was a mass killing of over 500 unarmed villagers by US soldiers in a southern Vietnamese village. This war crime caused widespread outrage to commence, and people were not happy about this event. A year later, in 1969, Ho Chi Minh died of a heart attack, the leader of North Vietnam.
I'm Ho Chi Minh, the leader of Vietnam.
Now, the US is invested in the war at this point, and the South would definitely be losing if the United States wasn't involved. That is exactly the problem, though. If the United States leave, the North would just take over. In 1973, the Paris Peace Accords were signed, and the U.S. troops left South Vietnam, but they were still giving them supplies.
Troops, we gotta leave South Vietnam.
Get out.
No.
A year after withdrawing troops from Vietnam, Congress then cuts aid to South Vietnam.
No more aid to South Vietnam.
And a year after that, North Vietnam wins the war in 1975.
Yeah.
But now that the general history of the war is over, what were its effects on people? According to Digital History, in the United States, the war made people trust the government less, and considering how the war was basically meaningless and the United States gained practically nothing from it, it's understandable why the people of America thought that. In Vietnam, the aftermath of the war was extreme. There were landmines everywhere, and a lot of buildings were bombed. Parts of the lush landscape were ruined by toxic chemicals. As many as 2 million civilians died in the conflict, sourced from Vietnam After War. It's clear that the Vietnam War was a tragedy with millions of people dying, and it's clear that the war still affects people to this day.